We're live.
Wow. So we have to do this all over, guys? It'll be very quick now. I'm sorry. People are probably like, oh my God, that sounds horrible, and like leaving.
No, yeah, we had no idea that there was such a bad echo, and we're just going off and going and going. And it's funny because I kept seeing like 3 people on, then 1, and then 3 people on, and then 1. So people are probably getting off because they were just like,
this is bullshit.
Exactly. So,
okay, we will do it again. We will be quicker this time, and we'll just. I think it. What? Yeah, I deleted it.
Okay, because it's not showing me that we're live, but it's fine. It says live. Let me see if
I see a person on there.
Oh, okay.
I think it's just what somebody said. It's just that it's picking up. We're picking up from each other, and since we're trying to be on our phone and laptop, is just not working out.
Yeah, that was Grace, by the way.
Okay, well, thank you, Grace.
Yes, thank you, Grace. We would have been 40 minutes in and not even knowing who's watching because we sound horrible.
Okay, yeah, we're just start from the beginning or. Okay, so we actually no, it works out better because the beginning we had all these interruptions, so no interruptions. Okay, so we wanted to share our stories because some of you have already heard our stories, some of you haven't, and we feel like it's good for us to share our story because we feel like our story and our voice will help other women not make the same mistakes we did. And it just will help other women. When you share your story, it helps other people. We let's see. I think there was.
Grace, is it better?
Oh yeah, let us know,
please. Yeah, before we start going into our long ass stories and have to do it again. Echo's gone. Please comment. Let us know.
This is 4 people's on.
Much better. Okay, cool.
Yay. Okay, well, if you're catching the replay, this is the good version, so you don't have to worry about all the other nonsense that happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think some people don't realize, we wanted to share a story because some people don't realize that we did not get the births that we wanted at all. And so I think people think, oh, they got these amazing, dreamy home births. And so that's why they want to help other women, because they want other women to have the birth that they wanted. And that's the total opposite of what our birth and postpartum stories are about. And so total opposite. So basically, I have 2 kids. I'll start sharing my story, and because my sister had her child years later, so and it's connected as well. So I have 2 kids, one's 7 and one's 3. My 7-year-old was born 2013. I started getting an idea that I wanted to have at least prepare for my birth and kind of just be in control. I didn't want it to just like be up to the doctors. So Wendy, I think it was, introduced me, or you know what? I think it was Danielle that maybe introduced you, that you introduced me. We all sat down and watched The Business of Being Born.
Yeah.
I don't know why I actually have this right here, but it is. And yes, this is, oh my God, like old school DVD.
I think it's on Netflix. I think it's on Netflix. And that documentary is listed in one of our PDFs. We have a PDF in our course where we list like all of our favorite books, resources, movies, everything to prepare you for birth. And that one is like, everyone should watch it. Even if you're not trying to have a home birth, you should just watch it so that you can just be aware of why hospitals do what they do. It was produced by Ricki Lake, which is, I know it's super weird if you know who Ricki Lake is.
Huge in the birth world, actually.
Sadly enough, a lot of these viewers might not know who Ricki Lake is. When you think about it, I just thought about that. Yeah, so Ricki Lake was like an old school talk show host, like Jerry Springer days, Maury, You Are Not the Father days. And she produced this documentary about the business of being born. And it's incredible and super eye-opening. And like Jenny said, I was there when we watched the documentary together during her first pregnancy.
My first. Yeah. So we sat there, me, my husband, and Wendy, we sat there, we watched that. And then for me, I think it just opened up my eyes like, oh, wow, there's way more here. This is a business. Like there is, my best interest is not, top priority. And so for my husband, I think it opened his eyes as well. He's like, wow, I didn't even realize like all of this existed, but he still was just like, we're still having a hospital birth. Like, this is all great, but we're still doing what's safe. And we want to make sure that, if anything happens, you're safe. So I ended up going the hospital route way and wasn't educated enough to know not to be induced. So I decided to get induced at 41 weeks because it wasn't safe for me to continue on. And so I got induced. And so that just led to intervention after intervention. And, I got an epidural, of course, baby got distressed, and contractions just got really strong. Baby couldn't handle that. And if what Pitocin is basically fake oxytocin. So they're trying to recreate oxytocin, which we have our own oxytocin. So anyway, we talk about this like cycle of interventions that now that years later, I understand, well, of course I ended up with a C-section. It all makes sense. Now, does everybody that get induced end up with a C-section? Absolutely not. It increases your chances for having a C-section or other interventions. I mentioned this. I mentioned this in the take one of this video, where when we talk about the cascade of interventions, we talk about how when you get induced, like Jenny mentioned, it basically is to encourage your contractions to come on faster and stronger so that you can get into active labor. But when that happens, they usually come on too strong, and you ultimately need an epidural. Some women, super women, can do an Pitocin without an epidural. It's very rare. I believe it's very rare, but it encourages your contractions to come on really, really strong. So then you ultimately need an epidural. And what an epidural does, it slows down your labor because it slows down the pain. And so it kind of starts that if your labor is really strong and then it slows down, and then your labor is strong and then it slows down, and then it's like the time just drags on, failure to progress, the baby's in distress, or it's just you've been in labor too long and they need that to flip that bed, you need a C-section. It's in the best interest of the baby. Yeah, you have to be like progressing at a certain rate when you're in a hospital. So you can't go past 10 hours. You have to be progressing at 1 centimeter per hour. Like there's all these things in place. And if you're not hitting those, which obviously you probably won't, if you're not hitting those, then you're going to have C-section. Yeah. Hospitals have all these rules that they set in place based on this, based on this birth standard that not every woman and not every birth is the same. So right. You can only push for 3 hours is their rule. And it's like some women push longer and they're just fine. You know what I mean? And that's just that hospital's rule because they have to protect themselves. They have to protect their doctors and their OBs and what's in the best interest legally. Unfortunately, that's really what it comes down to, of their interest. Yeah. Yep. So I ended up with a C-section, which again, right now, years later, it seems obvious to me. I felt like a failure. Wendy kind of was in the room with me, and my mom and my husband were like, it's fine. Baby's going to be healthy. Like, what's the problem? And my sister didn't even have kids, wasn't even thinking about having kids. And she was just like, give her time, give her some time to grieve and to mourn the birth that she wanted, basically. And so they gave me a couple minutes and then I got over it pretty quickly because I felt like I had to move on. Like I was being told, you got to move on. And as a first time mom, I was just hit Like motherhood was not a good introduction for me. I had no time to be thinking about what I should have done in birth and what I could have done. That was just like way down the list. I had a newborn to take care of, and that's it. But what I did know was that if I ever had a child again, I would definitely go for a VBAC. Like that was just like definite. And so I ended up getting pregnant, talked to my OB that I loved so much at the time. And let me just say this really quick. A lot of women will continue to they think that they have to see the OB that they started with. I don't know if you realize this. Like when you start going to OBs, I don't know, let's say, I don't know, you're like 15 or something like that. I don't even remember. You think like you have to start 18 and you have to start with an OB and like keep going. And that has to be the OB that delivers your babies. Like, no, you are in control. You get to choose who you want to be your OB for, just, pap smears or for your birth. So that's what I did. I was just like, oh, well, that's my OB that does regular stuff. So I guess that's the OB that's going to deliver my babies. I didn't know any different. So when I had my second, I was like, okay, I want to have a VBAC. I was all happy. And he's like, quickly shut that shit down. He was just like, I'm over here like thinking that he's going to be so happy for me, like, why wouldn't you want someone to not have a C-section? And then I just quickly realized that there was like, it wasn't my best interest. It was his best interest. And I could just tell that he wasn't going to give me a fair chance to a C-section, to a VBAC, which a VBAC, by the way, is a vaginal birth after a C-section. So after like just talking to other doctors, trying to find a VBAC supportive doctor, I had to battle and fight insurance companies and try to educate them on what I was looking to do. And so after all of that, which like Wendy said in the other video, it prepared me for what I do now, because now I understand like it's not that easy. It should be a lot easier. It shouldn't be a battle, but And
not only that, but just especially because not all women have the same opportunity to have, like, let's be real, like not all women have the same opportunity to have like amazing health coverage. You know what I mean? And the battle that you had to fight with the insurance provider to get them to cover your home birth is something that, again, kind of prepared us for, like, we can help walk women through that battle. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, it shouldn't be a battle, but it is what it is right now until something changes, which hopefully we can be the catalyst to change that, moving forward, or part of that, what do we call it? The ripple. For change. But it is a battle sometimes to get your insurance company to understand what you want and that you want a home birth and that it's okay, or, a vaginal birth after C-section, and that it's okay and it's not, and that it should be covered, because it's just as risky, I guess, as a repeat C-section.
Yeah. So like what he said,
somebody asked, did they end up covering it?
They did not end up covering it. No, it was, I'm telling you, it was a battle. It was teaching them to, I had to get, a midwife, which ended up being my midwife, to like help me explain to them what it is that she does. I had to send in, oh my God, wow, brings me really back. I used to work in corporate America. Thank God for their printer and their scanner and their fax machine.
Isn't that how we all work in corporate America?
That's the only thing I missed, like those bomb copy machines. It was just a constant like faxing this, emailing this, sending this, printing this, like all this stuff to try to figure out. Mind you, this was 7-8 years ago, so maybe things.
Jameson's not 7.
Oh no! That was Jackson.
You weren't trying to do a home birth with Jackson for
Jameson. Sorry, yes, that was actually that's true. He's going to be 4. So I don't know if things have changed since then, but
hopefully, insurance companies have progressed. I mean, I don't know because I'm not sure. So once we encounter it, we'll kind of learn that. But at that time they didn't cover it, right?
Yeah, it was just, I ended up, I fought, like Wendy knows, like I taught those people, boy, like I got into fights with them. I got one lady that was saying, so I don't understand why you're doing.
Jenny was the, let me speak to your supervisor.
I don't understand why you want to do a home birth. That's a VBAC or, a home birth, that's risky, isn't it? Like what, I'm like, it was just, I was having like these conversations. I'm like, well, I'm not talking to you about what I want to do. Like that is not happening here. Stick to your role, old lady. So yes. So then I'm trying to add this little banner as we're talking. So I ended up deciding on an independent home birth or independent midwife that would come to my house. And I, a lot of people think like, oh, I decided on a home birth because I wanted like certain, like this, like I had this idea, and it's like, that's not what it was. Honestly, it just started off with, I wanted a fair chance. I wasn't going to get a fair chance at a hospital. So, well, then why would I even try that? So then I ended up, laboring at home for 27 hours with Jameson. 27 hours into it, I asked my midwife, like, what's going on? I was only 6 centimeters dilated, and she's just like,
this video. At that time, when Jenny started her labor, her home birth, I was 3 months pregnant. So I was witnessing kind of everything that she was going through at the time.
Yeah, which was really scary, for her. You would think, yeah, I guess. I know, actually, I think, Johnny, I remember asking you, like, and you're going to do this, like, in the middle of, that was when I was way early on, and I could have a conversation. So anyway, I remember asking my midwife, and I'm like, what do you think? I mean, I'm 6 centimeters, and, she broke my water, and she's just like, I don't know, honey, like, we could be here for hours. We just have no idea. And so I remember her saying, just because you go to the hospital doesn't mean you're going to have a C-section. And so I was like, you know what? You're right. So from there, it was madness to try and get me. I got out of the tub, got me dressed, my sister and my mom and everybody's like, packing the bags and doing this, and just like craziness was going on. So then my pain just went through the roof, which, we talk about pain. And everyone experiences pain differently. So the way I will describe a contraction might be different from Wendy, but also pain gets magnified because of different factors. So a change of environment and atmosphere is going to make your pain go through the roof. So I get into the car, and we get into the hospital. Again, I feel like I'm dying. I get into triage. That's the word I was thinking of. And they're asking me all these questions. And I'm like, I don't want any questions. I just want an epidural. That's all I want. Because I remember it just being very different from when I was home in water, just like completely different. So 4 epidurals later, because they were not working, one fell out. It's just, my pain was just so crazy that nothing felt like it was like making it better. And so I finally get, to feel comfortable. And so I was, stuck in a bed now. And I remember this really nice nurse was like, we're going to get you your VBAC, and I'm so excited for you. So she gave me a peanut ball. I never knew what a peanut ball was at that time. You should definitely make sure your hospital has a peanut ball. So it's shaped like a peanut, and it helps your open up your pelvis and dilate. Because if you're just laying down, then you're not, helping things progress. So I got to 10 centimeters, and I'm like, oh, okay, so it's time to push. And, obviously I know now that 10 centimeters does not mean it's time to push. So I'm pushing and just not feeling anything, because I had these epidurals, and I didn't feel anything. And it makes sense now. It's just my body wasn't ready, basically. Yeah. And I always share this story.
Real quick. Not only that, but your body, like you said, it wasn't ready to push. And you said, just because you're 10 centimeters doesn't mean you're ready to push. Your body will tell you when it's ready to push. And that's the kind of the challenge with epidurals. And depending on the level, you can't feel it. So your body naturally tells you when to push. And I always remember I was at my sister-in-law, Danielle, I was at her second birth, and it was at a birth center. and she wasn't even at 10 centimeters. She was at 9, and her midwife was like, no, you don't push it. And her body physically I can't stop it. It was what's the word? Like intuition? I don't know the word.
It's a reflex, yeah.
Yeah, that her body was just ready to push, even though she wasn't at 10 centimeters. And her midwife actually had to hold her open so that the baby could come out.
Yeah. So
triage questions are the worst. 100 questions, and you have my ID, insurance, and name. Take me in, Lord.
Exactly.
Yes.
What I teach
questions after I'm already checking in a bed, please.
Exactly. So what I teach, we have our own birth class that you get access to in our membership. What I teach in terms of the triage is do not ask mom any questions. Not one question goes to mom. All questions get directed to either your doula or your partners, your husband. That's who should be answering questions, because as soon as you answer those questions, you're getting mom out of the zone. Mm-hmm. And she needs to stay in the zone, because that's what was happening. I'm getting all these questions and I'm like, and so I'm feeling the pain now and I'm not in the zone. So that's what we teach. Anyway, so I'm pushing and I'm just not feeling anything. I'm like, is this the way it's supposed to be? 3 hours in, the doctor comes in. It's this Hispanic woman that was pregnant. I'll never forget her face. I feel like I always say I'm going to write a letter to her, but obviously never do. I just want to punch her in the face. So she walks in and she's like, oh, honey, it's 3 hours in, you can't push anymore, unfortunately. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, oh yeah, it's a hospital rule. You can't push. But she never can give me a good evidence-based factual reason as to why I couldn't push past 3 hours. So I was like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Like, just stop me from pushing? And she's like, well, if you want to push past 3 hours, then you have to sign something saying that you're going to take the risk. And I'm like, okay.
Remind you, Jenny's in the middle of pushing in labor. And this doctor comes to interrupt to ask her to sign a waiver.
And so I'm on all fours. I'm like, bring the paper, bitch. Bring it. So she brings the paper and I sign it. And she's just like, she did not think I was going to do that. Because most women in that vulnerable situation are going to be like, oh my God, I'm putting my baby at risk. And absolutely not. Let's do what we need to do. I knew, this is what people always ask me, like, how did you know to keep going? I knew to keep going because the baby was fine. There was no emergency. I was fine. And this is what I teach in my class as well. I was fine and the baby was fine. There was no distress. Jameson was just perfectly happy in there. No issues. So what's the emergency? It would have been a different story if there was like distress or something, or I wasn't doing well. So this is what we teach, in our birth classes. You have to ask questions. You have to ask, how is Jenny doing? And how is Jameson doing? And if they say fine, then what's the problem? That's how I knew I needed to keep going. So anyway, so I signed this waiver and she says, she was very surprised that I signed it. And she just said, oh, so you're saying that you're okay with your baby dying?
I still can't believe it. A pregnant OB said this to a laboring woman. You're okay with your baby dying.
That's what you're saying by signing this paper. Obviously, if I wasn't on all fours and pregnant, I think I would have fought her. Like, seriously, I'm pretty sure I would have fought her. So I just like, I don't even know. I saw red and I just was like, get the fuck out of this room is all I remember saying. And so she left, never came back. And then she sent like her boss, I think it was, and he came in there and basically just said, yeah, baby is in a bad position. This is just not going to work. And so of course, now that I know what I know is, well, why can't get baby in a good position? At that point, what you needed to do was get me up, move me around. You can actually physically get the baby head in a perfect position.
There's a really cool video. Have you seen it where the doctor's like massaging the baby into position? It's actually, I think, massaging the baby to be head first. And it's like the coolest video because you can actually see the baby moving as he's massaging her stomach. It's incredible.
Yeah.
But again, most doctors or OBs are obstetricians and they are trained surgeons. So they are not
even probably seen.
They don't see natural birth that often, unfortunately, because they are trained surgeons. That's what they do.
Yeah. Yep. So in school that they're not even like shown any of this. So yeah, there's lots of different ways to get baby.
I'm sorry, that's another reason why we always advocate you should not labor without a doula. Hospital birth, home birth, birth center, wherever you're birthing, get a doula and make sure that doula is and ask them all these questions. What happens if my labor stalls? What do you do? Sorry, continue.
Yeah, and in birth, they themselves, like I had a doula and I wasn't sure if I was like, if the doula would have been like, because obviously she's seen lots of births before, she would have been like, Jenny, I don't agree. Like something like then, that might have influenced me, but her support and I felt like I was doing the right thing. So she helped me see that I could do this and I could keep going. So anyway, I think I pushed for, maybe 4 hours, something like that.
5.
Okay. All right. And yeah, so Wendy was the one that told me after that was like, you were in labor for 57 hours. And if you would have told me it was 6, I would have been like, oh, cool. Okay. So yeah, so at that point is when I was like beyond exhausted. I don't know what that was called at that point, but that was just like dead. Like I just did not care. And I did feel like I was in control at that point because I said, okay, at this point, I feel like it's time to get a C-section. Like it is my choice, not you telling me what you want me to do so I felt very empowered and in control in that particular moment. And then it kind of, long story. I feel like everything is a long story, but because I was in labor for so long, my bladder had lots of issues. I had like a sleepy bladder. So I had to have a catheter in. And for much longer than most people have to have a catheter in, I ended up having a catheter in for 5 weeks. At week 3, the doctor's like, I don't think I've ever seen this before. And so I was like, I'm never going to pee again. Oh my God. I still actually have slight issues with it. So I had this catheter in for 5 weeks trying to breastfeed Jameson. It was just a nightmare. And then the feeling started creeping in about a week or 2 later that I was like, what the hell just happened? Like it started creeping in like, wow, I was educated. I was empowered. I did all the right things and I still didn't get the birth that I wanted. Like I went through, it wasn't postpartum depression. I just was like guilt, angry, like lots of different feelings. And I just kept feeling like people were like, well, you have a healthy baby, you just gonna have to move on. And I just couldn't let it go. I was like, no, there's no way that women should be going through this. There's no way that it should be this hard.
And going through it alone, going through it, period, going through it alone. And yes, you have a doula and yes, you have a midwife that will answer questions, but it's just like the support and the community piece is just what's
I had no one to talk to. Yeah, except for you, and you still didn't even quite understand. Except for you, I had no one to talk to tell how I was feeling. I mean, I would tell my mom something and she didn't really get it either. It's just someone to like cry to, talk to, share stories with, the other people that can relate. Like I just had none of that. I just remember Jameson was born right before Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving and Christmas were just so sad. I just felt so depressed. I just felt just all sorts of different feelings. But one thing that remained true was I felt like this can't be it. There's no way that I prepared and did all of this for nothing. And so that's how I started my journey into getting certified to be a childbirth educator. Because I was like, if I can like prepare and educate women from the very beginning, then I can set you up for success so you don't have any problems. Of course we'll have problems, but I just felt like education was so important. Like if we can educate from the very beginning, then things will go so much smoother. so that is kind of my births in a nutshell. And then Wendy.
Yeah. So I got pregnant. Jenny was pregnant. We were pregnant around at the same time. And so I kind of got to experience everything that Jenny experienced. And even though her birth was traumatic, and it's crazy because both my mom and my brother-in-law and everybody that were there were like, you still want a home birth after what you went through? And I was just like, yeah. And the thing that I noticed, and what convinced me that I wanted a home birth was the difference in the environment. In the fact that when we were at home while Jenny was laboring, it was so peaceful. It was so calm. It was quiet. The lights were dim. She had candles. She was in the tub. It was so relaxing and such a different environment than the chaos of a hospital. The bright lights, the intrusions at every freaking hour, a new nurse coming in. And it's like, shut up and leave me alone to labor. Like, stop checking on me, you know? So when I was able to experience both, and I also actually experienced my sister-in-law, like I mentioned, giving birth in a birth center.
Very different.
Way different. All three were completely different. I wanted to do a home birth straight out the get, and especially because I was already into my crunchy hippie lifestyle at that time. And so it's what I wanted, and I wanted to be able to control my environment. And so I prepped for that. I did go with a birth center. I went to a OB at the beginning of my birth, when I first got pregnant, just to kind of like, I don't know, I guess start the process because I didn't know. But I really soon after I switched my care to a birth center. And that's where I would do my care, but I wanted a home birth. So they basically would have the midwife come to my house. I prepared as beyond. I had Jenny, I wrote down the oils that I wanted Jenny to put in the diffuser because I came up with a special blend that I wanted for my birth. I had a playlist that I created for my birth. Like, I prepared for my birth. Like, I knew I had like the snacks that I wanted. I had all of the things ready to go. And like, similar to Jenny, my labor started, my water broke. And so my water broke and I was in labor at home for 27 hours. Weirdly enough, Jenny and I were labored at home for the exact same amount of time. And so this is something that I still have problems with kind of accepting this, is sorry, my phone's falling because it's on the charger. I was told that if I labored at home with my waters broken after 24 hours, that my midwife would get in trouble if I got an infection, because that's usually the risk. They tell you if your water's broken for over 24 hours, you're at a higher chance of getting an infection. So that's what I was told. I was told that, and I didn't want to get her in trouble. That's the last thing I wanted. But I was laboring at home just fine. I was perfect. I was perfectly fine. I was managing the contractions perfectly fine. No issues whatsoever. I wasn't in that, I was in pain, but I wasn't in like active labor. I think I was maybe I want to say 3 or 4 centimeters at the time. And so because I was told that, I'm like, oh, I don't want to, and I'm thinking about somebody else, not thinking about myself. And so I'm like, I don't want to get her in trouble. So that's fine. Let's go to the hospital. And so we went to the hospital, and I remember driving to the hospital, and we talk about this all the time, how environment is so critical and so crucial to your birth. As soon as I stepped foot in the hospital, my contractions stopped completely. I stopped laboring as soon as I stepped foot in the hospital. And so,
which is a common thing. Like what happened to me can happen, and it's a very common thing when you change your environment, your atmosphere, for your contractions to just stall. It's actually a very common thing.
Yeah. So my contractions stalled, and then what happens? They say, we need to give you Pitocin because your waters have been broken for too long, and we need to encourage labor. And then what happens from there? Again, just like we talked about, the cascade of interventions, that, you know, I labored with Pitocin as long as I possibly could. And I remember when they said, you know, do you want an epidural? And I cried because I was just like, I should be able to do this. Like, I should be able to handle this. Like, this is like, I didn't want this, you know? And so I remember my doula, she was with me still at the hospital. She stayed with me the whole entire time. And she was just like, it's okay, you know, to accept an epidural. Like, it's not, you're not a failure for, even though I felt like one, you're not a failure for accepting an
But just an FYI, it is not normal to labor with Pitocin. That's not normal. Like, you're not supposed to have like, yeah, I think I went like maybe 5 hours or something with it. It's almost impossible.
Because it's so, yeah, it brings down the contractions so powerful.
Another level.
Like, it's another level. So yeah, so then I got the epidural, and I think my total labor was like, I don't even remember exactly. I think it was like
40 something?
Maybe like 37 or 42 hours my labor. And again, at the end of the day, my labor just stalled, never picked up. And so they said I was laboring too long, and I ended up with a C-section.
And it didn't help that she's just laying on a bed.
I was laying on a bed. And again, I thought I over-prepared, but I didn't prepare for the pivot. I didn't prepare for, if I'm at the hospital, what do I do? Now I know if I'm at the hospital, I don't want the fetal heart rate monitor. I want to be able to get up from my bed. I want to be able to walk around. They strapped me to the bed so that you're not allowed to, you can't move. Mm-hmm. And so like now, obviously on the other side, I know better. And so I ended up with the C-section. My recovery wasn't too bad, but I did, you know, and that's part of my story is I struggled with postpartum depression and anxiety for a while after birth, and then that's kind of what led to my story of wanting to help women during that stage. And so like Jenny and I kind of combined forces. Like Jenny wants to prepare you for birth. I want to prepare you for after birth and for postpartum. And so I had a lot of guilt. I remember I had a lot of shame with the fact that I'm this crunchy hippie person and I over prepared for a home birth that I didn't get. I remember the first time that I heard somebody I knew that had a successful natural birth. And I remember I had to call my friend Lisa and we had to go for a walk because I was at work, and I broke down crying because I was like, why couldn't that be me? And I feel like a lot of times, yes, we have a healthy baby, and of course that's like what matters the most, but our experience matters too. And the fact that it's okay that we feel grief and shame, not shame, but we shouldn't feel shame, but it's okay that we grieve the birth that we wanted and we didn't get to have. And that should be acceptable and that should be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we had, you know, a lot of shame in sharing our births because we just didn't, I guess we kind of felt like, who are we to teach other women to get the birth that like, who am I to teach someone else how to have a VBAC when I didn't get one myself? Or who is Wendy to teach someone to plan a home birth, or, you know,
when I wasn't successful in mine.
Right. And so what we realize is, who are we not to teach women this? It took a long time. Yeah, exactly. It took us a long time to see, oh shit, what do you mean? We're even more, you know, prepared and this is even more like
we're more qualified than
exactly.
Because if we, and you wrote this in the email, is you can't pull somebody out of a well if you haven't been down there yourself. And so like Jenny mentioned, it was kind of hard for us to accept that, like, oh, we're gonna, you know, educate women on like this beautiful, serene home birth that we didn't have ourselves. But it's like, we've experienced it all. We experienced the home birth. We experienced the birth center. We experienced an OB birth. We experienced C-section. We experienced postpartum. We experienced the fighting the insurance company. We've experienced so much that, and yes, we don't know all, but we know both sides of the coin. Yeah. And we want to be there to educate and empower women on this. Yes, let's prepare for your ideal birth. Let's do it. But if this doesn't go as planned, let's also prepare for that too.
Yeah. And that's probably the key to our story, is that we didn't know that we didn't know the importance of like a plan B kind of situation. And this is where it also gets into like, people are like, well, why even have a birth plan if it might not go, and birth is unpredictable? Absolutely. But if you don't even prepare for what you want, like, how are you even going to get it? Like, it makes no sense for you to just be like, I'm just going to like leave it up in the air, and what happens. Like, well, that's not going to work out.
And not only that, so like, you prepare for the birth you want, but then like, you know, you have like if this happens, like, you know, the little, so you're at a home birth, but if you have to be transferred to the hospital, this will happen. But then make sure you do this and make sure you do that. You know what I mean? Like, kind of prepare for all of the things.
All of it. And that's what we didn't do, and that's what other people are really not doing. Like, they're not teaching. Like, in our birth class, we talk about pivoting in birth. How do you pivot in birth? You know, if you do have to get transferred to the hospital, like Wendy and I did, like, what kinds of things can you do to help, you know, that your labor doesn't get stalled, or that your pain doesn't go through the roof? Like, what kinds of things you do? And that's what our thing is. We will prepare you for that dream birth, but we will also prepare you to pivot. Yeah, it's super important.
And then, not to mention, we will also prepare you for postpartum, which is a huge piece that a lot of birth classes miss, unfortunately. Like I said, I over prepared for my home birth, and I did not prepare one bit for postpartum.
Most people don't. Yeah, most people don't even think about postpartum. Like, oh, I'm just going to have a baby and I'm just going to stay home. And like, well, I don't know what you want me to prepare for.
What if you do end up with a traumatic birth? How do you cope? And so that's what we're there to help and walk you through and hold your hand. If you had a traumatic birth, we're going to be there to hold your hand after it and to support you and after that birth.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And I was going to say something else, and I kind of slipped my mind. Wow. Yeah, definitely slipped my mind. So yeah. So the point of us sharing our story is to tell you how we didn't get the birth that we wanted, but we realized that if we would have gotten the birth that we wanted, if everything would have gone perfectly fine, we wouldn't have found our passions, and we wouldn't have been where we are today, basically. So, you know, we are the perfect person, to the perfect people, to, you know, to help you, you know, plan your birth and teach you ways that you can pivot in birth, and help you prepare for postpartum, help your partner help you prepare for postpartum. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been through it all. And so because we've been on the other side, we know what not to do, what mistakes that we've made. And we don't want other women to have to make those mistakes. Like, there's no reason why we should be, you know, having these traumatic birth experiences and
having regrets
and having,
if you're educated and prepared and prepared for the pivot, you won't have those regrets.
Yeah, shame and the guilt. Yeah, I think that's probably the key, is you don't want to feel like a failure after, because you did it all. You did exactly what you need to do. You pivoted everywhere. So why would you have any guilt, you know? Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're doing a disservice, you know, to women, basically.
So with all that said, wrapped in a nutshell, that's our story. That's why we do what we do. And we'd love to have you in the Baby Mama membership. And this, you know, we talk about all of our things, all of our experiences in the Baby Mama membership, open to 20 women only. So please, you know, are we going to have a link? No link, right?
Yes, I'll put a link in the comments, because we're just on Facebook now, right? Yeah, well, I'll put a link in the comments.
Where you can learn more about what's included and what you get and all the details. If you have pregnant friends, if your daughter's pregnant, if you know a pregnant person, tag them in this video. We'd love to have them part of our membership.
Yeah, and just really quick, it includes the birth class, it includes group coaching, it includes access to experts, and it also includes our trimester kit. So we are providing that holistic support from all different angles. So yeah, any questions, let us know. And the link will have a join now button that's super simple, and you get a an introductory congratulations email as soon as you join.
Yeah. And feel free to DM us if you have any more questions that you want to ask on the side, or even if you want to get on a call with us. We're happy to chat and kind of let you know exactly what the Baby Mama membership is all about.
Yeah, see if it's a good fit for you. All right, guys. Well, thank you for hanging in there. If you watched this and you didn't watch the other one, we have a lot of technical or problems, but we're good here now.
Take two. All good. Giraffe.
All right.
All right. Bye, guys.